الله الرحمن الرحيم. الإخوة والأخوات الكرام، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته، ومرحبا بكم اليوم وشكرا جزيلا لتلبيتكم دعوتنا المتواضعة وتشريفكم لنا لنحتفل سويا نحن مجموعة دعم الأحفاد بيوم المرأة العالمي. والشكر كل الشكر للإخوات المتحدثات دكتور مهندس تبارك بلال والأستاذة أو الدكتورة تنوير بليل والأستاذة سارية نجيب خليفة، وأيضا سيدير النقاش الدكتورة رانيا خير. والشكر كل الشكر أيضا للأستاذ منعم إبراهيم شوف اللي هو يعني لتشريفه لنا اليوم، ومرحبا بك. كما لا يفوتني أيضا أن أهنئ كل الأمهات بعيد الأم اليوم، وكل سنة وكل الأمهات طيبات وبخير وعافية. ومن هنا أيضا أود أن أتوجه بالتحية والإجلال لكل مناضلات بلادنا داخل وخارج السودان، وأقول لهن أنتن النفس وروح الحياة المنبعث في ضياء الكون، وحاضنات الرسالة الإنسانية الخالدة وجواز عبورها إلى المجد بابتسامة وثقة. التحية للكنداكات في ساحات الثورة يقفن جنبا إلى جنب مع إخوانهن، والتحية والإجلال لأمهات الشهداء اللائي قدمن فلذات أبوابهن من أجل الحرية والديمقراطية. كما نترحم على شهدائنا الذين قدموا أرواحهم فداء ليعيش الوطن. التحية للمرأة وهي جامعة الحياة في البدايات والنهايات ورائحة الذكريات، هي المقاتلة والمناضلة والثائرة المنبعثة نورا وحياة في داخل وخارج سودان الحبيب، حارسة الحلم وضامنة البقاء وموقدة نار الثورة ومؤسسة العهد الجديد. هي المرأة مهما تبدل أدوارها ظلت بروحها واحدة تجمع كل الصفات وتتغن بإداراتها بامتياز وباستثنائية لا يستطيع أي من الرجال إضغانها، فهي معجونة معها منذ التكوين بالصبر والرقة والحنان والطاقة والغيرة والجمال والأنوثة والكبرياء الزاهد والطيبة المتواضعة. هي المرأة في يوم عيدها الماضية للأمام بخطوات واثقة لا تنظر للخلف بتاتا، بل تتقدم بجدارة إلى الأمام لتخلع عنها كل ما علق من سلبيات. زمان كانوا بيقولوا لنا المرأة كان بقت فاس ما بتكسر الراس، ولكنها أثبتت إنها ما محتاجة لفاس لتكسير الراس، ولكنها أثبتت إنها ما محتاجة لفاس تكسرها، ولكنها كسرت رؤوس بما أوتيت من علم ومعرفة زادتها ثباتا وعزيمة وقوة. وفي هذا اليوم ننحني إجلالا لكل الماجدات اللواتي قدمن أرواحهن في سبيل تحرير الوطن والخلاص من المحتل، ولكل من عذبن في السجون والمعتقلات وقدمن أرواحهن غرابينا على طريق الحرية والاستقلال. ونبارك للمرأة عيدها وندعو لها بالمزيد من التقدم والعطاء على ذات الطريق لرفعة المجتمع وتطوره ومزيدا من العطاء يا نساء بلاده. وشكرا جزيلا.
أنا معلش هعيد الشكر تاني لأنكم لحضوركم. وفي الحقيقة الندوة دي اتعملت تحت شعار اللي هو احنا أخذناه من الشعار بتاع اليو ان ويمن، نبني بذكاء، نبدع من أجل التغيير ونطمح للمساواة. وفي الحقيقة الشعار ده عنده أسبابه، لأنه تحقيق أهداف التنمية المستدامة الطموحة يستوجب حلول متكاملة جديدة ونظرة شاملة وتغييرات نوعية، خصوصا فيما يتعلق بالمساواة النوعية. وبناء على التوقعات بلانت 50-50 لن يتحقق في عام 2030. لذا لابد لنا أن نبدع في التغيير وإزاحة العقبات التقليدية والتأكيد أن النساء والبنات في ركب المسيرة. الإبداع والتكنولوجيا والبنية التحتية الذكية توفر فرص غير مسبوقة للتغيير، ولكن المعدلات تشير بأن النساء أقل تمثيلا في مجال العلوم والتكنولوجيا والهندسة والتصميم. عليه فإن الاحتفال لهذا العام تحت شعار نطمح للمساواة، نبني بذكاء ونبدع من أجل التغيير، من أجل بناء نظم ذات استجابة نوعية gender responsive لسد الفراغ النوعي، وذلك بالإبداع والبناء الذكي والنشاط ذو الطابع النوعي. أحب أقدم لكم أول متحدثات دكتورة تبارك موسى عوض بلال. أنا هقول الاسم كامل، موسى عوض بلال. أديكم نبذة عنها. دكتور تبارك موسى عوض بلال Associate Professor in Sustainable Development in Construction and Director an Admission Tutor of MSc Construction in Emerging Economics within the School of Built Environment at the University of Reading. She is the current chair of Reading University's Teaching Fellows Community of Practice. In 2016, she received the highest professional accolade in construction industry, the Fellowship of the Chartered Institute of Building. In 2018, she received the penultimate professional accolade for educator in higher education, Senior Fellowship of the Higher Education Academy for excellence in teaching and learning at UK Higher Education Institution. Between 2012 and 2016, she was the director of undergraduate program responsible for the management and delivery of the undergraduate curricula across 4 degree programs. She had led and participated in a number of research projects which have resulted in numerous peer-reviewed journal articles and conference papers. Most of her journals articles have been cited widely in leading and top-rated international journals. Her research interests include innovative mechanisms for diffusion of innovation, knowledge, management, and sustainable development in construction. She also has extensive research pertaining to the role and participation of women in construction, particularly focusing on gender imbalance in the UK construction industry. She is a regular keynote speaker at international conferences. In 2018, she gave keynote at the African Union headquarters in Addis Ababa on the role of women in transformation of the construction industry. In 2016, she was invited by the African Development Bank to be on the Skills Development Panel at the Inclusive Infrastructure Development Convention held in Johannesburg. She has regularly organized and chaired symposiums in the UK and Sudan, focused on capacity building of Sudanese and African construction professionals. Today, she will talk about inclusive sustainable infrastructure development in Sudan, innovative for change and build smart. نحيي تبارك.
شكرا دكتورة رانيا. السلام عليكم جميعا وشكرا للحضور وبرضو شكرا للدعوة والاستضافة. يعني في الأول طبعا دايرة أحيي المرأة السودانية بمناسبة عيد الأم وبمناسبة اليوم العالمي للمرأة. تحية للمرأة السودانية في كل مكان في داخل السودان وفي بلاد المهجر. تحية لبناتنا لأماتنا وحبوباتنا وخالاتنا وعماتنا. والتحية للمرأة السودانية المناضلة الكنداكة، مناضلة عبر تاريخ السودان، التاريخ القديم والتاريخ الجديد من أجل الحرية ومن أجل العدالة. طيب أنا إن شاء الله حأتكلم عن Inclusive Sustainable Infrastructure Development في السودان، وطبعا التوك حقتي حتكون بالإنجليزي لأنه شغلي كله هنا ده وكله بالإنجليزي وقرأت بالإنجليزي، وعشان أعرب القصة دي كان حتاخد مني زمن طويل جدا فمعليش. طيب الاوتلاين بتاع البرزنتيشن، اول حاجه دايره اخد البرزنتيشن ذاتها او دايره اخد التوبيك نفسه in a context. طبعا الكونتكست بتاع السودان، ف gender perspective in Sudan. لكن في الأول دايرة أعرف ب how the world views Sudan from the outside, from a gender perspective. فإن شاء الله I will go through some statistics that I have collected from different organizations, international organizations, in relation to this particular issue, which is the gender perspective. And then I will talk about the two themes, the United Nations 2019 themes on the International Women's Day, which, as Rania referred to, Innovate for Change and Build Smart. And then hopefully I want to end with a call to set a vision for Sudan. I call it the Vision 2030 for the development, general development of Sudan, economic development. And I will try to pull everything that I say towards this vision. So I'll start with the United Nations theme for International Women's Day. When Rania invited me to give the talk, I was a bit hesitant, to be quite honest, because I couldn't work out in my head how I would pull the issue of innovation with the issue of buildings and infrastructure and smart build with the International Women's Day. It was an incredibly difficult journey for me the past 3 or 4 weeks. But then and that's because I actually at the university, I teach the concept of innovation, but in construction. So I teach it as a theoretical concept and how it is applied in the construction industry. And of course, I also teach aspects of sustainable development in construction. I am passionate about research in terms of women's contribution to the construction industry. Now, putting all of these things together was a challenge. So I started off by looking at the statement on the UN's website in relation to the themes. And I picked up this statement, which actually helped me to pull all of these different threads together. So the statement says, innovate ways in which we can advance gender equality and the empowerment of women. So it really put in my head that the innovation aspect of it, I shouldn't approach from an academic point of view. I should really approach it from the point of view of empowering women. The United Nations focuses on 3 particular issues in relation to Innovate for Change. First of all, innovate for social protection, innovate for access to public services, and finally, innovate for sustainable infrastructure. You would not believe how happy I was when I picked up on sustainable infrastructure, and I thought, okay, this is my area, and I think I can do this. In fact, I want to look at and focus on the aspect of sustainable infrastructure, and I want to think about how sustainable construction might actually help us in finding innovative ways to empower women to build smart, which is the second theme. And hopefully through building smart, then that might influence and impact on how women can actually access public services, which in turn also can impact on how social justice can be achieved for women. So the focus is going to be on sustainable infrastructure. So now I want to tell you how I actually pulled this together. I thought about Innovate for Change. Okay, I now understand from the UN that change and innovation needs to be related to empowering women. So I thought perhaps I needed to think about ways or strategies for empowering women in the construction industry. And I wanted to find innovative strategies and embed these in terms of infrastructure development and how women can actually be included in the planning and in the implementation or implementation processes of infrastructure projects. So I'll talk later on about the concept of engineering together, and that's how I envision this inclusivity in terms of sustainable infrastructure. And so, building on the inclusivity and sustainability of infrastructure development, then we can begin to think about build smart, and how we can actually empower women and develop their skills to be able to build infrastructure, buildings, and so on. So I have two examples of where this has actually been happening. The first example is what Practical Action, this is a UK-based organization, or charity, which does extensive work actually in Sudan. So I'll talk about that, but I will also talk about an international initiative in this respect that deals with development of skills of women to build smart, and that's the Bearwood College initiative. And through these, I wanted to sort of focus on who these women are, who would be interested actually to be involved in the development of infrastructure, particularly infrastructure in Sudan. Now, I studied civil engineering, so obviously I'm already sold, but how can I inspire other women to join the industry, and in fact, even if not educated educated in engineering, but normal women, women who don't work maybe, who can actually contribute and participate in the discourse and the dialogue about infrastructure development. And first of all, before I start on it, I want to put the whole thing, as I said, into context. And I said before that I wanted to give an overview of how the world views us from the outside in terms of gender perspective. And I've got a couple of slides about how we view ourselves as well from that perspective too. So I'll start off by looking at the population profile in Sudan. This is the population profile as estimated in 2016. The information is pulled out from the CIA World Fact Book. It is available online. The CIA has a fact sheet on every single country in the world. So if you Google it, you will find this information about Sudan. Now, if we look at this profile, you will see that the first thing is that it's in a shape of a pyramid, first of all, where we have a very wide base, and then the numbers get progressively smaller as we climb up the ladders of that pyramid. We can also see that it's almost a mirror reflection. So this side is male population, and this side is female population. Now, what's interesting for me actually, when I picked this out, is that it is the widest aspect of this profile is at the base. Now, the profile is divided into age groups, 5-year intervals. So you can see in Sudan, the highest population or in the demographic of the country is actually the infants, 0 to 4-year-olds. So you'll find that just over 2.4 million girls and a bit more on the boys' side. And again, if we look at the profile from 5 to 9-year-olds, again, this is the second highest population in Sudan. Again, almost approaching 2.4 million, and actually just exceeding 2.4 million. And I could go on all the way up to the ladder. Actually, I wanted to put a slide here just for comparison, to compare Sudan with the UK, but then I deleted the slides for some reason. But for the UK, it literally looks like a house with a roof and walls that go down to the foundation. So the population profile is completely different. We have an incredibly young profile in Sudan, as we can see here. If we divide that profile by gender, first of all, the population after the cessation, so this is estimated in 2017, 2018, the population is just over 43 million. Now, as we saw in that profile, it's almost 50-50 male to female. The males are slightly higher, so the ratio is 1.02. And the median age in Sudan is incredibly low. So we're looking at 17.9 years. Now, when we talk about median age, this is the age below which 50% of the population lie in terms of age, and above which the other 50%. So to have a median age of 17.9 years again reflects how young our nation is. So breaking that down into female and male, the female median age is 18 years or just over, and the male is 17.7 years. Now, this is one of the issues or one of the critical parameters I want to focus upon. Another critical parameter relates to life expectancy at birth. Oops, I've done something. I'm going to put all of these together later on when I talk about Innovate for Change and Build Smart and so on. This is just the background. So life expectancy at birth. In Sudan, the life expectancy is 65.8 years. Again, this information has come out from the CIA World Factbook. Interestingly, and this is something that we really have to celebrate as women, is that the male life expectancy at birth is 63.7 years. The female is 68.1. That is the only one positive statistic that is in favor of women in Sudan.
No surprise.
Well, on average, we live about 4.4 years longer than men in Sudan. So the second parameter I want to move on to is education. And let's have a look at the education profile in Sudan. So the expected years of schooling, this is when a child starts school. We expect that child in Sudan to stay in school for 7.4 years. Now, we need to bear in mind that even with the changes in the education system in Sudan, we have a 10-year schooling system, 8 years in foundation, al-asas, and then 2 years in secondary. However, a child today in Sudan, when they start school, you expect that child to last for 7.4 years. That's less than the total schooling. In fact, all over the world, of course, we know that that is about 12 years. In fact, in the UK, it's 13 years, maybe 14 years if you include reception and then you include the nursery year as well. So in the UK, it's double the expectation than Sudan. So if we break that down into male and female, we can see that the females are expected to last for 7.2 years in schooling. The second parameter that relates to education is the mean years of schooling for adults who are 25 years of age or over. So these are all of us who have completed our schooling years, and that mean years of schooling is 3.7 years. Can you imagine? This is such a depressing statistic. I mean, we have to take all of these statistics. In fact, it comes out from the United Nations report, 2018. Of course, we take every piece of statistic with a pinch of salt. How accurate is this statistic? But still, 3.7 is quite dire, really. And again, if we break that down into male and female, the male, 4.1. These are all the men who are 25 years or over, and female 3.1 on average. We're quite very privileged, actually. When I look at this statistic, I really felt so privileged to have achieved the education that I have received. Another parameter that relates to education is the literacy rate. for all of those who are 15 or over, and that's 53.5%. That's good. Literate means they can read and can write. But then when we look at the population of Sudan with at least some secondary education, so not necessarily completed their secondary education, the total percentage is 17% of the population. And again, this is from the United Nations. I mean, they get these statistics from research that they do through the United Nations Development Program in Sudan. I'm sure Ahfad is involved in some of these research projects as well. For female, it's 14.7%, and for male is 19.3%. And then the most depressing statistic for me personally is this one, which is the female share of graduates in science, mathematics, engineering, manufacturing, and construction at university level, and that is 12.8%. Now, I really, again, was shocked. I think, I hate to think about it, but I think I was living in a sort of a bubble around the image I had about women in Sudan and the education and engineering. When I studied civil engineering at the University of Khartoum, there were a lot of us females within the faculty. And in fact, I went back again to the Faculty of Architecture. I did some research with them, and 80% of architecture students, 80% are women. So when I come and see this statistic, I felt that really we live in a big bubble. That's not the whole story. We just see only a very narrow view of the full picture. So this is the picture from the outside world. If we then look at the picture from the inside world, and I managed to get this graph from the Ministry of Labor in Sudan. So they do, I think it's an annual survey. It's called the Labor Force Survey. This is a bit outdated because it refers to results from 2011, really. But let me just go through what the graph says. So here we have the population. That's in millions. That's 1 million there from zero. Here we have the number of illiterate youths. This particular graph relates to the 15 to 24 years bracket. So we have about just over 500,000 of illiterate youths in Sudan, 15 to 24. About almost 900 million have education of some form which is less than intermediate. So we're talking about foundation. And about just less than 300,000 intermediate or secondary school. And then we have here 159,000 university graduates in that age group, and this is not stated. So again, even the picture from within is incredibly depressing. Hopefully I will not depress you to death this evening. I hope not. We'll look at the positive side of things. This one here, it's not stated. Not stated. So it's about 11,000, just less than 11,000. So that's in terms of education. So we looked at population, we looked at education. So now I want to move on to look at another important critical indicator, which is economic indicator. And so the economic performance of countries is usually measured in terms of gross national income, measured in PPP, which is purchasing power parity in dollars. Now, again, this is from the UN report in 2011, so it's a bit outdated, but I'll have an updated one in a moment. So in Sudan, the per capita gross national income was 4,300 in 2011. Now, if we break that down into female and male, that's the gross national income for males, over $6,000. For female, about or $1,800, just less of that. As I said here, it is an outdated statistic. But I have a more recent statistic, and this comes from the World Bank. 2016, the gross per capita PPP was $2,140. Now, unfortunately, the World Bank does not break it down into gender. So I don't have that statistics. That's why I brought in the United Nations. However, we can put this into the context of the world. So the highest ranking country in the world is Monaco, and in Monaco the GNI is $186,000, right? And these are the top 10 countries in the world. So you've got Norway here, number 3. You've got the United States. We've got Qatar as well, $75,000 per annum. You've got the United States, 56. And the UK is about ranked 21 with about $43,000. And then if we look at the bottom countries in the list, the first thing to notice is that they are all in Africa. Yeah, and you can see here Burundi is at $280 per year income per person. That's per capita. So in 2016, actually, Sudan was doing quite well. $2,140, ranked number 138 out of 190. Now, what I forgot to say in the earlier slide is that the UN figure of $4,300 was collected just before the cessation of South Sudan. So it was the period of oil boom, exactly. The economy was doing well. So it went down, and I suspect it will go more down. So I want to put this context into why I brought this. So the World Bank classifies countries in terms of their GNI, PPP, and they classify countries into 4 categories. So the 4 categories are low income, which is less than $995, low middle income, $996 to $3,800, upper middle income, $3,800 to $12,000, and high income, which is more than $12,000. And in 2016, Sudan was classified as a lower middle income economy. So in this sort of categorization here, which was quite good. With the current economic crisis and political instability, I suspect that the next phase of these calculations, this is an annual process. It happens from July to July. I suspect that we will go down to low income economy. Okay, so let me move on and have a look at the next slide. I can't remember what this is. Oh yes, this is linked to economic parameters again. So it talks about unemployment rates. And I really want to focus on unemployment rates by gender and by mode of living. And again, it refers to the youth mainly. So we've got here 15 to 24-year-olds and 15 to 29-year-olds, and then it breaks it down into the 5-year category that we looked at earlier. So the total, and again, this comes out from the Labor Force Survey 2011. So this is a bit outdated, but that's the most recent I could find. So the total rate of unemployment in Sudan in 2011 for the age group 15 to 24, 33.8%. And if we break that down into males, that's 22%, into females, that's almost 60%. Now, this table also breaks it down into urban and rural, so the mode of living. So if we look at, I'll just focus on the female percentage really. If we focus on the rate of unemployment in females, under this category of age, that's 74% in urban areas. That's the big cities. So we're talking about the capital and other big cities around Sudan. And in rural areas, it's 33%, much lower. Again, something that I couldn't fathom out, I couldn't understand, but this is, it says here, وزارة العمل مسح العمل. You know, this is the table that I got from that documentation. And apparently, women in rural areas work more than women in urban areas. I don't know whether...
as works, they're not seen as a luxury. You need as much finances coming into a family if you've got a lower socioeconomic income.
Yeah.
We see the same thing in the UK, where if you've got a privileged sense and you've got more money, then people have the luxury of staying at home, more likely women than men.
Yeah, good point.
That would include farming and so on.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, in rural areas. But still, the contrast is really sharp. That's 74% and that's 33%. So moving on then, I want to look at the classification of countries by the United Nations. Now, we looked at the classification by the World Bank, and that is purely based on economic indicators and economic parameters, GNI per capita. The United Nations said that people and their capability should be the ultimate criteria for assessing development in countries, and not only by economic indicators and in economic growth. And because of this, they developed their own classification system for countries in the world. So again, the United Nations classify countries into 4 categories. We will look at the categories in a moment. And these categories are based on human development and economic characteristics. So it's the same economic characteristic, which is the same economic indicator, GNI. But let's look at the human development parameters that they use. So the first human parameter that they use is the long and healthy life. So I'm going to take you back to the life expectancy at birth. So this is the first parameter that they use. They actually convert the percentages they calculate into indices, and they work out a human development index. And based on that, they classify these countries. So that's the first one, long and healthy life. The second one is education. So the 2 parameters I showed you earlier on, which is the expected years of schooling for children starting school, and the mean years of schooling for adults that are 25 years or above. And then finally, they also use the gross national income per capita, PPP, just like the United Nations. Yes. وعليه الصلاة والسلام.
إنه يعني عمر أمتي هو من 63 سنة. It's funny إنه the United Nations is using this as a method of measuring the development بتاعت الناس. What's your thoughts around this يعني؟
لأنه for developed countries, they feel that if they can give their population, their people, healthy lives, and they can sustain healthy lives for longer, that is a measure of development and economic development. ممكن الدكاترة في can give us more enlightening about this issue. But it is a measure of how well developed and how economic growth as well can be translated into public services and delivery of healthcare and that sort of thing. But you're absolutely right, yes. So Human Development Index, as I said, is calculated in a really sophisticated way. I do not know, I have to confess, how they calculate these indices, but they take life expectancy at birth, they convert it into an index, they take these 2 measures of education, they calculate an education index, and then the GNI also, they calculate an index. Out of these 3 indices, then they produce their Human Development Index. So moving on, and these are the classifications, the 4 classifications. So you have very high human development with an index of 0.894, and you can see here, maybe I can just about read, there are about 59 countries in the very high HD category. Just less than 1 billion people live in these 59 countries. Then we have the high human development with an index of 0.757, 53 countries and 2.3 billion people. Then we have the medium human development, and that's 0.645, 39 countries, 2.7 billion. And then finally we have the low human development index of 0.504, and here we have again 38, 39, I can't see really from here, but it's just less than 1 million. Less than 1 million people live within that category. So, hands up if you know the Human Development Index for Sudan. Okay.
Doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist. Which category do you think? Medium? That's interesting. That's really interesting. We have a debate here. Low. Below low. Oh, right, okay. عشان نكون واقعيين جدا جدا كمان. طيب, okay. So in terms of Sudan as a country, the HDI is 0.502. Well, no. No, this is the threshold. So anything above 0.504 will go up. So anything below will go within that category. Yeah, أيوة. لكن actually, somebody said medium. And for those who said medium, you're absolutely quite right. Because if we look at the male human development index, it's 0.537. So it's above that threshold. It's still within the low human development, actually. And then if we look at the female aspect, it's 0.446. Despite the fact that women live 4.4 years longer than men. Yeah? But then when you look at education, when you look at GNI, it brings the total index down, in whichever way they calculate this. And so let's just recap our situation. I'm not sure how I'm doing for time, but I'm halfway through. Sudan has a young population profile. Females make up almost half of the population. 50% of the female population is of 18 years or under. Women live slightly longer than men. Expected years of schooling for girls is well below the international standard of 12 years. The mean years of schooling for girls is absolutely alarming. That was 3.7, I think it was. And the share of females in STEM, science, technology, engineering, manufacturing, construction is quite low. And females are worse off economically than their male counterparts. This is just the context. So we can now move on to the themes of the United Nations, and the first theme, which is implication for innovative empowerment strategies for women. So let's have a look. Innovate for change. And I mentioned this before. How can women be empowered, and how can we develop innovative empowerment strategies for girls in Sudan? That's the basic idea. And so for me, I wanted to think about the full profile. We have a young population and people die early, 68, you know. So we need to think about everybody and take everybody with us. So full age spectrum for Sudanese females, and the empowerment strategies should really be targeted and should be specific to age groups, because certain things will suit certain ages and not other ages. And so in terms of innovate for change and empowerment of women, I believe that at the heart of this has to be education. There is no other way out. So we need education. We need education. We need girls to stay on in education until at least they complete their secondary schooling. At least that's for that age group between 4-5 years of age and 18, 19. So we need to develop empowering strategies for those girls in order for them to remain in schools until they finish the full years. The second empowering strategy should be focused on the youth 15 to 24 or 29. We saw the unemployment statistics there very high in urban areas. And I think we need to find ways of encouraging more girls to go into universities, to have higher education. And for those, because let's face it, not every girl will be able to go to university. For those who don't, we need to develop strategies for vocational training. And of course, the construction industry, infrastructure development is all about vocational training. And lastly, for those who are above the age of 25, even if they're not working, even if they're illiterate, we need to develop strategies for upskilling them, skill development, in order to empower them. And that's what I want to focus on next, which is skill development. I think we must think about empowering women through skill development. So, this picture, skill development to build smart. I'm moving on to the second theme now. This picture is in Darfur. I don't know how many of you know that women in Darfur work extensively in the building industry. Yes, good. However, the issue is, what sort of work do they do? And what sort of wages do they earn? So I want to look at this from the perspective of Build Smart. And from the question of what are the opportunities available for women who work in the building industry, like those Darfurian women, how can we ensure that they develop the skill to build smart and to earn more through their work? So I'm just going to take you through a series of pictures. Here we have women handling mortar, delivering mortar to bricklayers, or actually delivering bricks to bricklayers. Again, the same story, handling. You can see this woman is trying to lift up something to hand it over. And again, around picking up bricks, sorting out sites, cleaning the area, or taking and delivering sites to where bricks to where they're going to be built. And so before I move further into this Build Smart category, I just want to pay tribute to the person who actually sent me these photos. Back in 2013, I organized a building capacity program for the Sudanese Contractors Association. So a few of the Sudanese contractors came to Reading for a week. And one of the engineers who came, late engineer Hassam Ishaq, I didn't know him beforehand, but we got talking about my interest in terms of women in construction. And he was from Darfur, and he owned a construction company there, and he used to build these. So these women were working actually for him in his building site. So he went back to Sudan and sent me these photos in 2013. Unfortunately, a few months after he sent me this email, he passed away. Yeah, we were supposed, subhanAllah, we were supposed to be working together in this particular aspect of skill development with the women that he works with. So just to recap, women work as unskilled labor on building site, which necessarily means that they earn very low wages, if any, by the way. Some women work for free, by the way. Yeah, they don't earn any wages. There are currently no plans for skill development at all, no prospect of empowering women, but things don't have to be this way. And in fact, they're not always this way. Because in Sudan, as I mentioned earlier on, there is a charity, it's a UK-based charity that's called Practical Action, that is doing extensive work in terms of skill development for women in the building industry in Darfur. Here is a document that is again freely available on their website, the construction of the timberless house model. They produced a technical report that takes you through the construction of a house vernacular structure, so using vernacular designs, vernacular materials, and construction methods from the surroundings, from the community. And this is a step-by-step guide to how to build this house using technical, the technical drawings that they provide. So if we, just very quick, so these are some of the drawings from their technical report of how to build a vernacular house. Huh? But more interestingly, and really positively, they take women in that journey with them. So you can see here, we begin to see pictures of women bricklayers doing a very sophisticated kind of structure, which is a curve of bricks. Here, this is a woman plasterer, and again, we have a woman plasterer here doing the plastering of the roof on top. Yes, absolutely. Yes. Roman impact. And not just in Sudan, actually. I wanted also to have a look at what happens in the wide world. I have a small video. I don't know how we're doing in terms of time. Where's Rania? I need to be quick, right? Shall I show this video or shall I skip it? About 2.5 minutes. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so this is skill development opportunities in India.
Is that of India's Barefoot College. Following a bottom-up approach, the Barefoot College in India has trained hundreds of semi-literate and illiterate women, many of them grandmothers from villages in Asia and Africa, to become solar engineers. The women from all the countries arrive at the Barefoot College, where they live and train for 6 months. After being trained, these women have gone back home to establish electronic workshops, install solar panels and batteries, maintain and repair them, and change life in their remote villages forever. Moreover, they have trained others in neighboring villages to do the same. In many developing countries, rural villages are often cut off from the main power grids. Connecting them to mains energy is often too expensive, making the centralized system an ineffective solution for these poor communities. Decentralized photovoltaic systems are a much more viable, sustainable, and cost-effective solution. The Barefoot College in Bologna, India, is the collective effort of many barefoot professionals, and one of the founders is Bunker Roy. The college began in 1972 with the conviction that the solutions to the problems of the rural poor lie within the community itself, in the mixture of the traditional knowledge and skills, along with new technologies that simply require some adapting to their specific situations.
You have to actually develop the people to do it themselves so that they can then replicate it on a large scale. Your job is to facilitate, your job is to spark it off, and then let it fly on its own. And it has flown. We make a big mistake by bringing in technology first and then thinking of training afterwards. You should sensitize the community first to technology.
The 80,000 square feet.
So I'll just stop it here, really. So I just want you to imagine with me, if we can take these illiterate grandmothers and train them to become solar engineers, and also give them the skill to build their own homes and put these together in remote villages, wherever these may be, in the Blue Nile region, or in Shimal Kordofan, or in Darfur, or in Shamalia, or whatever it is, women building their own homes and getting energy and electricity through solar energy. That would be a real achievement. And a huge difference we could make to communities across Sudan. So train them to build their own homes and solar power them too. So the final few slides that I have relate to the issue of inclusive sustainable infrastructure development. I found this the hardest bit actually to prepare, because I wasn't sure whether to talk about sustainability from a conceptual point of view, and but I'll try to skim through it very quickly. So the question is, how can women be included in the planning and implementation processes of sustainable infrastructure projects? So I, of course, think that infrastructure everybody thinks infrastructure is the backbone of any economic development and economic growth. Without built infrastructure facilities, we really cannot grow any economy whatsoever. And I believe that Sudan is in dire need of construction development in terms of all sorts of infrastructure. So in terms of water, purification, water supply, sanitation and wastewater drainage systems, housing, energy, and all the different aspects that actually help us grow factories that help us grow our economy. And so last year, actually, I was involved in writing a research proposal with a couple of colleagues at the University of Khartoum, one from the Faculty of Anthropology and one from the Faculty of Architecture. And we came up with this concept of engineering together. And the essence of that research project is to enable communities to participate in policy and decision making around infrastructure development in Sudan. It wasn't funded, but we're looking for different funding sources. Infrastructure development, what does that mean? It means that we go through all of these different processes, from the feasibility, planning, procurement, design, construction, and operation and maintenance. And the concept of engineering together requires everybody, all the stakeholders, governments, the construction professionals, the communities where these infrastructure projects are to be built, to come together through all of these different stages to participate in that development. So I feel that there is a lot that women can actually contribute towards within this concept of engineering together. And so we need to develop strategies for empowering women, which actually should be written within the project documentation right at the start. Strategies for, as I said, education, training, and skill development. And it has been done before. This is from the Olympic Park, just down the road here in East London. By the end of the construction work, the legacy for women in East London, where the Olympic Park was actually built, is that 266 women were directly employed within construction jobs with construction contractors. 362 were given training opportunities and provided employment. 580 women were encouraged to continue working in the industry well after the games were finished. So there are strategies that we can adopt and apply back home. So now the final few slides. The United Nations Secretary General said that let's make sure women and girls can shape the policies, services, and infrastructure that impact all our lives, and let's support women and girls who are breaking down barriers to create a better world for everyone. In terms of Sudan, I did say that I have a vision. I call it the Vision 2030. I know that, to help Sudan develop from a low-income economy. I don't believe that we are a lower middle. I think we are a low-income economy. But to help us realize economically grow into a middle-income economy, we have to think about the construction industry and put that at the heart of that vision. Now, what is the vision? Well, I don't know. It needs to be written. And I'm not the one who's going to write it. Different stakeholders, governments, professionals of all sorts and backgrounds need to come together. But what I do know is that there are certain questions that need to be included from my perspective into the vision. What are the latest trends in skills development and inclusiveness in infrastructure projects elsewhere, maybe in Africa, the rest of the world? What shortcomings in project design and implementation that hinder participation of women? We need to deal with that. What needs to be done to improve the project design and implementation for more inclusiveness? And which best practices in skill development and inclusivity could we draw from, maybe from the private sector? But before we can do any of these things, of course, we need Sudanese nation to stand in solidarity and to stand in unity to deliver our ambition for freedom, for peace, for justice, for our beloved nation, Sudan.